Hello everybody, it's Thorfinn here, and today I wanted to do pretty much a tier list on the agents in Valorant now, and kind of how I think that they stand and stack up in the meta. Not only that, I think this is kind of important to sort of preface. This is before they make any changes to ISO. I think any changes that they make to Neon aren't necessarily going to change where I think that she will stack up. But I think there will be quality of life changes to make her not as oppressive as she is now. But ISO, I do think he is very subject to change, which is why I'm not going to overrate him and say he's broken right now, because I don't know where he's going to stand, but I have some ideas of how they're going to adjust him due to community backlash. So that's where I'll try to put him into where I think he'll be. So I'm going to make this tier list based off of mainly like ranked and like lower levels of play, not higher levels. I think that in higher levels of play I can make a tier list, but it'll be slightly different. But yeah, so we're going to go through the controllers here. The first controller that I think we have here is B tier, and that is going to be Harbor. Brimstone I think is going to be C tier. Clove I think is going to be B tier as well. Omen I think is going to be S tier, and then Astra is going to be B tier as well. So I think Viper I think Viper's gonna be A tier. So I think this is probably going to be a pretty recurring theme, right? Now Omen isn't like super oppressive and he's not super strong, but he's just the best controller. So I'll try to put the best of each category, no matter how I feel about them, in the S tier to kind of give you that idea. I think Viper is still really good. I don't think that she's going to be used as much, and I think that her nerf kind of gives you that idea of like, hey, I could really commit to the double controller style of play. It's pretty good. Or I could do something different and kind of go with a double initiator, especially because of where the initiators are right now, and I'll talk about those in a second. I think Brimstone and all of these controllers could genuinely use buffs. I think these two at the top don't really need it. I think Astra needs either a 5th star or her stars need to regenerate. I think Harbor needs probably the ability to adjust his like wave crashes, so he can turn them vertical, or his orb needs to stay on after it gets broken. I think that's a thing that people have talked about a lot. I think that would help him in the long run. I think Brimstone needs to either A, get a 4th smoke, which I think would be pretty cool, or they need to adjust how his stim beacon ability works and make it maybe like a heal. I think would be pretty good, or make it radiate off of him, or give him a second one. I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing either. Clove, I think they didn't really need to nerf them. I think Clove was pretty good where they were at, but nonetheless, Clove, pretty good. We're going to talk about Sentinels. So I think Chamber is, I'm going to say he's D tier. The reason why I think he's D tier is that if you kind of try and play Chamber on every map, every like TP spot that you think would be really good is usually fucked off by like a meter or like 2 meters of radius, alongside the fact that he has to deal with 2 things that restrict his range, which is kind of limits KJ on maps as well. Really kind of dampens his play. I think slightly increasing the radius of his TP, as well as maybe making his, either giving him a second trip, which I don't think is necessarily the right move, or just removing or just making the radius on that trip bigger, I think would be really good for him. But I think now he's kind of D tier because he's just not that good. Realistically, I think there's no reason you should play him over like a Jet, for example, if you want an opper. Deadlock I think is going to be B tier. I think Deadlock's really good. I think in the meta now that we're removing Viper, I think Deadlock is going to shine a lot more. We've seen a lot of Deadlock in tier 2, and I think Deadlock is really good, really punishing, especially with this retake meta that we've kind of scene where it's all about dedicated retakes with a lot of utility. I think Deadlock really hampers that. I think people are getting more creative with her Gravnet and her Barrier Orb and her ultimate, and I think that the sky's the limit for Deadlock, and I really hope that they maybe slightly buff her, but I think keeping her where she's at to make her this really high skill, high reward agent is pretty cool. I think Sage is also D tier. I know the reason why they don't buff her is because in low rank she's really good, but realistically her entire kit's really ass. She has an Aether ult orb alt. She has a worse heal than Sky. In my opinion, her wall is shit. It's worse than the Deadlock Barrier Orb. And her slows get chewed out really fast. And they're not as great stall as you'd want them to be. Yeah, I just think if you want a secondary controller, if you want a secondary Sentinel, Viper or Deadlock just fills that role a lot better than Sage. And I think honestly you might have to either rework her kit or make her really strong, which making her really strong would just kind of fuck over the lower ranks. So I think Sage is going to kind of sit in this D tier for a while. Cypher I think is S tier. I think Cypher's the best Sentinel in the game. I think Killjoy is getting really easy to outplay, especially with the Raze meta, right? So Raze is a lot more popular. I think with Neon, Killjoy doesn't necessarily come back in. I still think Cypher just does what Killjoy does a lot better against every single one of these agents that are going to be your duelists. I think the only duelist that doesn't really play well into Killjoy are duelists that don't have movement abilities. But when you're playing high level, like high elo ranked, not ranked, but if you're playing like in Premier or people that, you know, actually try and play the game like scrims or tournaments or stuff, there's just no reason I think to pick Killjoy on most maps besides maybe Ascent. I think every other map I'd rather have Cypher. And I think Killjoy is B tier next to Deadlock. I don't think Killjoy is insane. I think Killjoy is really good, but I think Cypher is just a lot better. And I think that realistically, the way that the game is played, that you could get if you have to play a Sentinel, you should just play Cypher. And if you don't want to play a Sentinel, you just shouldn't play any. Yeah, like I think you can get away with on a lot of maps realistically playing without a Sentinel. So now we're going to go into the initiators. Sky is clearly the worst initiator at C. I think any team that still tries to play either solo Sky or play Sky at all, I think is just stupid. In my opinion, I think the best way that they could make Sky good again, which is how they should have nerfed her originally, is make her flash a one use ability that recharges. I think that that would be perfectly fine. And honestly, not make her meta again, because she still wouldn't have as much information as say like a Fade, because she just doesn't have as much util, right? But would make her pretty decent to use, especially in double initiator compositions. I think Breach is A tier. I think with the map pool, his flashes, his aftershock, he has a lot of kit. Any agent that you'll notice that a lot of these agents, any of these agents that have the ability to break Cypher trips are going to be sort of up in this B to S tier, just because of how Cypher is so dominant in the Sentinel meta right now. I think KO is sort of B tier. I would say probably like probably above Astra, but above Harbor actually. I'm gonna put Harbor towards this end here. And Clove can probably go down here as well, I'd say. I think KO is really good, and I don't think that he's necessarily like bad. I just think that because Cypher is the main Sentinel, he's not going to be as good, right? If you're running into a Killjoy, KO is really good. But if you're running into a Cypher, or like if you're running into any of these Sentinels, KO is really good. But if you're running into a Cypher, that's really where you're not going to get as much value, because a lot of the times if you see a KO and you're a good Cypher player, you throw your trips to one side and then you play strong side with your team. So your teammates can have trips to play off of, and you don't have to worry about getting hit by a KO ult or a KO knife. Gecko I think is A tier. I think a lot of people think Gecko is really overpowered, I don't think so. I think his ult is really OP. I think they need to increase the orbs on that, but I think everything else is pretty good. I think the mosh pit is really hard to use, but you can get a lot of value out of it because of how big it is on like site takes or retaking areas, especially on Lotus. I think Gecko's like really good. I think his flash is super easy to hit. I think solo Gecko is bad. I think Gecko without any utility, like Gecko in a composition or on a team that's really exec heavy is really good, because the more utility that the enemy team has to dodge, the more value you actually get out of Gecko utility. I think on the new map Abyss, because of how the map is designed, I think Gecko is going to be pretty good because of like the wingman, especially clearing out angles. I think a lot of people underestimate and underutilize the wingman for doing that, clearing out close angles, picking it back up, and so on. So yeah, I think Gecko is definitely A tier. I'd say probably I'd say worse than Breach because he's not that good on his own. Fade I think is A tier as well. I think all the initiators are really good. It's kind of hard to have a bad initiator. I think with the compositions, with the new maps, I think Fade is kind of leaning towards more being meta. I think certain maps where she isn't meta, she could become meta. For me, one of those maps would be Icebox. I know a lot of people don't really rate Fade highly on Icebox, but I think that the way her kit is and how it's used could be really good for Icebox, and it's just better than Sova, but that's kind of a more personal opinion. I think obviously kind of the big thing that sucks is Cypher. If you're running into a Cypher, Fade isn't as good because you know, you just don't really have anything to break the trips unless you want to it kind of depends on like your composition, right? Like for a Neon, for example, you're gonna kind of want a Sova. If you have a Raze, you can go with a Fade. So I think that's one thing that's pretty interesting, and kind of what I think Cypher kind of needs an adjustment on his one-way trips. I don't really know how they would do that. I think maybe making it so where the hitbox for the trip is smaller, like the wire itself, not like the places you can break it. So you can kind of walk out a little bit into the trip and shoot it, and not just instantly get clipped by it onto a one-way. Because that's really what makes Cypher as strong as he is, because you can throw trips that just can't be shot, which I think really sucks, because there's not a single other Sentinel with that kind of uncounter ability, right? Like a Killjoy, you can shoot the nanos and stuff right before they pop off. They even have a wind up most of the time, right? Same thing with Chamber. I think the only one that doesn't have that is Deadlock, and her Deadlock things are super big, whereas Cypher, super tiny wires, and just really hard to break. So that's kind of what makes him really good. Enough rambling. Sova I think is A tier as well. Again, it kind of depends. So now we're gonna get into our duelists, right? They have almost, or if not the most agents in the game, but a lot of them aren't that great. So let's talk about them. First, I think Yoru is B tier, but I think he's really close to being A tier. I think the only thing that sets Yoru out of the meta is because people aren't good at him, right? I think if you can master Yoru, if you take the time to really like understand how the agent works, how to take your timings, when to TP, how to use the clone, and a lot of other things, right? If you really get down this agent, he's like the best duelist in the game, realistically. So I think any changes to him would be on the economy side and nothing towards the balance of his abilities, because his abilities are really oppressive and they're really good. But it's just being able to like counter them, being able to play against them, you know, is usually really easy if you're not playing against a good Yoru player. But if you're playing against a really good Yoru player, he can be fucking irritating. All right. Next we're gonna go to, let's do someone that didn't really get any changes this patch. Let's go to Jet. I think Jet is I think Jet for the first time ever is C tier. I genuinely think that Jet should not be played on any map in the pool at all. I think every map in the pool you would be better playing Neon, or you better playing Raze, right? I think Jet is a comfort pick and Jet is like a pop-off pick, but I think that she's slowly starting to see this idea of her being like Reyna, where unless you have a player that's really good on that agent, there's really no fucking point, and you can get more out of these other picks, right? Like, I really don't understand why on like Icebox and Ascent and a bunch of and other things that Jett is still so dominant, especially on Icebox, right? Because let me tell you, dude, Raze on Icebox is insane because you can just break the entirety of a Killjoy setup towards the B bomb site and really open it up and make it super easy to take. Yeah, that's my opinion. I think Jett isn't really that good. I don't really think you can buff Jett without making her like oppressive and ranked, but I think slowly but surely, the way that like the game's adapting and changing, it's really just kind of pushing her out of the meta, and there's really no reason for you to play Jett. Yoru, not Yoru, sorry, Phoenix. Phoenix is D dog shit tier. Phoenix is shit. Like, he's just really bad. He has 2 of the best abilities in the game, but because his other 2 abilities are so bumfuck useless, he's just really bad. I think what you need to do with Phoenix, right, is you need to do a patch that is entirely around changing Phoenix, and that's the only thing in the patch, and it gives him buffs and nerfs like they did with ISO, Neon, Neon and Reyna. Specifically Reyna, I like the way that they changed Reyna, but I'll talk about that in a second. I think if you do that with Phoenix, you can actually make him playable. I think if you make his flashes have the ability to be thrown from a farther distance, I think that would be really good. As well as making them maybe easier to dodge as sort of a counteraction to that. Make his ultimate more orbs, and then make his molly either A, heal more and do more damage, or B, just last longer. I think ticking more damage would be really cool, or adding like a burning effect would be kind of sick, sort of like a tick down area of effect. And I think also making his wall just a lot more convenient, making it being able to throw over structures and less clippy would be really cool, but they've kind of showed hesitance towards doing that, which I understand to an extent, but I think that his wall is just really clippy and it's not as useful as it could be. Or just making it longer, maybe. It's the shortest wall in the game, and the maneuverability on it isn't as good as like a harbor wall, for example, so I just really don't understand why it's so limited compared to every single other wall in the game. Let's talk about Reyna. So I think Reyna is C tier, similar to Jett. Still only has 2 abilities that help her team. Even those abilities aren't that good. You have to layer them, which is kind of where utility goes to die. If it has to be used with other pieces of utility, usually in pro play it's not that good. The only reason if it is that good is if it's like a combo piece of utility, which means it combines 2 elements of utility, aka flash and info, like Gecko. But because it's only a flash and it has to be layered, that's not the greatest piece of utility to require layering in order for it to be useful. If it was like an info ability, it would be pretty fucking good, but it's not. It's a flash, so it's really not that good. By the way, something that a lot of people don't know, I'm actually gonna build this here, but this right here, these right here, I'm not gonna count Yoru because he can TP, right? But this is the order: Neon, Raze and Neon are basically like the same distance. Jett and Reyna, of how far you can travel with your movement abilities. So Reyna moved from like down like mid pack to all the way to the top, and Raze moved all the way from the top all the way back. So pretty big changes that I kind of want to talk about. I think Reyna low-key is better than Jett because of this ability, actually. I think this ability and the way that it is opens up a lot of opportunities. I still don't think that she's good for pro play. I think it's kind of stupid. But personally, I would rather have a Reyna than a Jett because motherfuckers don't shoot blinds, at least in ranked, and low levels, they just don't want to shoot the Reyna blind. So, actually, I genuinely really like that. So let's kind of put these down here again. But yeah, I think that what they can do for Reyna is pretty simple. They just need to in my opinion, they should combo her heal now that it's 50 with her dismiss and make it one ability. Maybe slightly change it, but I think that that wouldn't be too terrible, because you'd have to get a kill and then you'd use it, right? The only way you could activate it, and then you'd have to get 2 more kills after using it in order to pop it again. So I think that that's not bad, because essentially you'd be on your you'd have to get 3 kills in a round to be able to pop it twice, which I think isn't bad in comparison to Jet, where it would be 2, Raze, which would be 2, ISO, where it'd be 2, Neon, where it'd be 2, Yori, where it'd be 2. So I think that wouldn't be terrible to make Reyna's E just a little bit better than everyone else's in the Duelist class, because it requires more output from you to actually use more than once. And then give her like some sort of info ability, or make her flash a hard flash, I think would be really cool, but I don't think that they're going to do that. I feel like it would be a lot better for her kit if the flash wasn't a shootable flash, and a flash that just throws up, pops really fast, right, and then goes away really fast. So it pops, blinds you if you're looking at it, pushes you off an angle. Probably you don't need to make it last very long, but I think that it would be a lot better of ability if it wasn't the paranoia thing, in my opinion, because it sort of just pressures the enemy a lot longer, and it just has less counterplay. But yeah, and then adding like an info ability or something, or like a stun of some kind, would be really cool. I think the info ability would probably make more sense for Reyna, with her kind of whole theme. I think like a close range info ability that works like the Leer, where it's super close range, you can throw it through walls and it will ping once and that's it, I think would be really cool. But I doubt that they're ever going to rework Reyna, unfortunately. So now let's talk about Raze. I think Raze is still S tier. Yeah, I know. Kind of disappointing, but with the meta and how everything works, she's just the best. She's the only Duelist that has 3 pieces of... actually, the only agent in the game that has 3 pieces of utility to break utility, right? That's why Sentinels always struggle in the meta unless they are super oppressive, is because of Raze. Because her grenade has this dumbass ability where it separates into a large area, and is allowed to break Cypher Trips and Killjoy utility and a bunch of other shit. And realistically, it's honestly like, you could take Raze on each map just to counter Cypher. Like, her kit is that good at dealing with his utility, and you know, Cyphers have been able to kind of counter this, right? That they can take back their trips and stuff like that, but that's also guaranteed info, and depending on how they run this grenade, if they do it like right as they're about to hit, if he is in a position to take back that trip, he's also in a position to get fucking ran at. So it's really hard to balance Raze by doing everything besides adjusting that one part of her kit, aka this insanely oppressive piece of utility that allows you to break Sentinel kit, right? So let's talk about Neon. I think Neon's an A tier. I think Neon is going to be used on a lot of maps. I think that the one thing that they really need to do is change the sliding accuracy. Now, the reason why is because I think that it's really stupid that it works at a far distance. I think at like close and possibly medium range, think of like Phantom one-tap range, if you kind of know where that is, right? The sweet spot of where you can one-shot someone in the head with the Phantom. I think that's where she should be accurate with her slide, and anything after that shouldn't be, right? It should be very like hard to hit, and not really go towards her crosshair, right? I don't know how they would necessarily do that. I think you just make it so where the first shot accuracy while you're sliding is higher, so it's just more room for error while you're trying to shoot while sliding. But I think it makes her engagements a lot easier, and I think that that's really the only thing that I think is crazy about her buffs, is that sometimes you get like the normal Neon thing where it's like, hey, they stun, they throw util at you, they fast scale on you, slide on you, and they kill you like while sliding, which I think that that's fine, especially if you're super close range. I think that's kind of how Neon should be designed, right? She's supposed to be this very fast agent that works really well when you can close the gap really quickly, and it gives her an actual advantage in closing that gap and taking the risk by not having your gun out while scaling. But I think being able to do it at a super far range is just kind of silly and shouldn't be part of the game. ISO. Oh, best initiator in the game. It's kind of hard, but I'll say Gecko. I forgot to do that, so Gecko's S. ISO is like S tier right now in ranked. He is a ranked demon. But realistically, I think they're going to change him into like a B tier agent or like a C tier agent. So he's no longer to be D tier, I don't think. But I think essentially my problem with ISO is that he gets the balls to constantly refresh his orb, right? Which really sucks, because being able to go into a gunfight off rip just without any utility already, not including utility, and just have an advantage with the shield is really punishing. ISO is essentially an agent that if he's really good, like he is now, he breaks the fundamentals of Valorant. The fundamentals of Valorant are tap and burst, right? But because of his shield ability, it completely ruins that gunplay. And spraying isn't reliable in the game. So if, for example, right, if his ability was in Counter-Strike, it wouldn't be as good, right? It's like Blackbeard from Shield. Blackbeard from Siege, right? So Blackbeard in Siege is like kind of mid, because you can just break the shield with one bullet, and you have fast fire rate guns that just, you know, even though you hit the guy in the shield, you still just instantly hit him again. But even the Phantom doesn't shoot that fast. The Stinger shoots really fast, but all the other guns in the game don't really shoot that quick. So you really just can't like insta break it and insta kill him right after. It gives you an actual like large room to work with, and really allows you to be very ignorant and stupid with his kit. I think that realistically right now he's like S or A, probably more towards A, because you can get rid of the shield, you can outweight it, right? You don't have to duel it, like you just kind of have to wait to hear the popping noise, and you just kind of have to fuck off and throw utility at him, so he doesn't have that advantage. But in ranked, you don't really get that opportunity, unfortunately. So he's just a menace. And having a shield for 5 out of 5 1v1s that you take is fucking stupid. So I really hope that they change that and they make it so where it's, hey, you can pop it, but you don't have the balls anymore. You can't shoot the aim labs bubbles, right, to get your shield back. That's a no-no. You can re-up it after 2 kills. I think that would be the way to balance it, and that would put him down to like a B or a C tier. But right now he's A. I would probably say probably better than Neon and Viper, because of just like the firepower utility, firepower potential, right? Yeah, so this is a really long tier list, but I think I spoke my mind and said everything I needed to say. I hope you guys like and subscribe. Tell me what you guys think about this tier list. I think it's pretty solid. But yeah, see you guys in the next video. Peace.